The moment the door closes, a performance begins. It is not a performance for you. You are already part of the audience she has left behind. It is a performance for herself, for her friends, for the world she curates on her screen. In the immediate aftermath of her departure, she is buoyed by a surge of what feels like liberation. The initial silence is not empty. It is filled with the ringing affirmation of her own decision. She tells herself she has escaped. She has chosen herself. This is the story, and in these first days and weeks, she is its most ardent believer. She becomes the author of a new narrative, one where she is the hero and you are the antagonist she has wisely overcome. The past is rewritten with swift, certain strokes. Your deep commitment becomes suffocation. Your quiet consistency becomes boredom. Your genuine love becomes too intense or, conversely, not enough. There is no room for nuance in this first draft of her new life. The complexities of your shared history are sanded down into simple, justifiable reasons for her exit. She leans heavily into the validation of her inner circle. Friends who tell her she deserves better and that she is so strong for walking away. Their echoed affirmations are the bricks she uses to build a wall between herself and any creeping doubt. This is the era of the grand distraction. Her calendar fills with a frantic energy girl's nights, new hobbies, dates with strangers whose faces blur together. She throws herself into the noise because the noise is a shield. Social media becomes her primary stage. A carefully angled photo with a glass of wine and a bright, genuine-looking smile is captioned with a quote about self-love. A picture from a hike with friends is proof of a renewed spirit, a life being lived fully and freely. Each post is a deliberate piece of evidence in the case she is building against her own potential regret. She is not just convincing her followers. She is conducting a live, public séance to summon the ghost of the happy person she is determined to become. Your silence. In this chapter is her fuel. She interprets your lack of pursuit as confirmation of her narrative. If you were truly valuable, you would fight for her, wouldn't you? The fact that you don't is woven into the story as proof of your emotional inadequacy. She expected a dramatic climax, begging, pleading, grand gestures of performance that would have validated her importance and allowed her to play the role of the merciful or resolute queen. Your quiet acceptance, your refusal to crumble, is read not as strength, but as a final cold confirmation that she made the right choice. It allows her to paint you as the one who never truly cared, thus absolving her of any guilt. Beneath the curated surface, however, the first, almost imperceptible cracks begin to form. They appear not in the middle of a loud party, but in the quiet drive home. They show up in the moment she wakes up alone in a silent apartment, the buzz of the previous night having faded into a flat morning light. It is in these unguarded seconds that a random memory might flicker, the way you used to make her tea without asking, the sound of your laugh at a stupid joke, the simple, unremarkable comfort of sharing a space without the need for constant conversation. These memories feel like static, a brief interruption in her new broadcast. She quickly swipes them away, attributing them to sentimentality or habit. She turns up the music, texts a friend, checks her likes anything to re-establish the signal of her new, perfect life. This is the central conflict of Chapter 1. The fierce, determined construction of an illusion against the subtle, persistent whispers of a truth not yet ready to be heard. She is a master at soothing her own ego, at compartmentalizing the past into a neat box labeled lesson learned. She acts carefree because she believes that by acting it, she will become it. She flaunts her new life not out of malice, but out of a desperate need to convince the one audience that matters most, herself. The victory she feels is real, but it is a fragile one, built on the unstable foundation of denial and performance. She has walked away from the shared reality you built. And for now, the thrilling, solitary act of building her own is enough to keep the hollowness at bay. The chapter closes with her still firmly on stage, the spotlight bright, the applause of her own making ringing in her ears, successfully pretending not to notice the first few threads. Beginning to unravel in the curtains, the performance must eventually pause. The distractions that once roared began to lose their volume, and in the resulting quiet, a new sound emerged, not a shout, but an echo. It starts subtly, a faint resonance in the empty spaces of her new life. She could be in the middle of a crowded room, laughing at a new acquaintance's joke, when a sudden, unbidden memory of your steady, quiet presence will wash over her. The laughter feels thinner afterward, the crowd louder and more superficial. This is the beginning of the unraveling. The moment the curated story she tells the world clashes with the quiet truth, her soul begins to whisper. The echo is not of grand gestures or dramatic fights, but of the mundane comforts she once took for granted. It's the ghost of your stability, the memory of a foundation that was so solid she never had to think about it. She feels the absence of your attention, not the performative, eager attention of new admirers, but your deep, calm focus that made her feel seen without needing to be constantly entertaining. Your energy, which was like a gravitational anchor, is gone, and she finds herself feeling unexpectedly adrift. The new men in her life are often louder, more eager to please, quicker to validate, yet their efforts feel like noise, a desperate attempt to fill a silence they don't understand. And it only makes the echo of your composed silence louder. She responds. At first, by turning up the volume on her own life, she schedules more dates, stays out later, and posts more fervently than before. It is a fight against the silence, a battle she is determined to win through sheer force of activity. But the law of diminishing returns sets in. The thrill of a new admirer's text is fleeting. The validation from a social media post fades minutes after it's been posted. Each peak of excitement is followed by a deeper trough of stillness, and in that stillness, the echo persists. The emptiness she feels is not a void that can be filled with things or people. It is a specific, shaped space that was once perfectly occupied by the unique quality of your presence. The harder she tries to fill it with external noise, the more she is reminded of what is no longer there. The performance begins to feel like hard work. The smile she wears, a weight on her face. The carefully constructed facade of her liberation remains, but it is now patched with the growing, unsettling knowledge that the freedom she fought for feels less like victory and more like loss. The initial story of your coldness begins to rot from the inside out, replaced by a dawning and unsettling respect. Her memory of your final interactions undergoes a slow, silent alchemy. The silence she once interpreted as indifference now echoes back to her as strength. Your refusal to beg, which she initially took as proof of your lack of feeling, now stands in her mind as a monument of composure. She replays the scene of her departure, and the narrative shifts. She remembers the look in your eyes not as one of defeat, but of a profound, unspoken understanding, a recognition of her choice, and a quiet decision of your own to accept it, without crumbling. This realization is the crack through which the full weight of her miscalculation pours. The foundation of her ego, built on the assumption that you would always be waiting in the wings, shatters. She understood her power as your dependence on her. Your ability to walk away without looking back reveals that her power was an illusion she granted herself. You did not collapse. You evolved. She may hear whispers of your progress through mutual friends, or see glimpses of it online. A new sense of purpose, a life not just continuing, but sharpening its focus. This growth is a mirror held up to her own choices, and the reflection is brutal. She thought she was the prize he could not bear to lose, but your thriving existence proves you were the anchor she could not afford to cut loose. This is the chapter where regret truly takes root. Not in the soil of sadness, but in the bedrock of respect. The man she left is not the broken figure she expected to find in the rearview mirror. He is someone who proved his worth most powerfully in the act of letting her go. Your strength becomes a haunting standard. It was the quiet, immovable strength that doesn't need to announce itself. It's the kind that cannot be negotiated with or manipulated. She realizes with a sinking clarity that she did not simply lose a man who loved her. She lost a man whose core was so solid that her departure could not fracture it. This is the truth that cuts deeper than any argument or tearful plea could have. She thought she was in control of the game, but she was the one who forfeited the most valuable piece. As the months stretch into years, the haunting specter of your memory solidifies into a permanent and unforgiving benchmark. The initial, sharp pangs of regret have faded. But what remains is far more insidious, a constant, low-grade dissatisfaction that colors every new connection she attempts to form. She enters the dating world with the stated desire to find a new partner, but her subconscious mission is far different and ultimately self-sabotaging. It is a quest to find a replacement for something that was, by its very nature, irreplaceable. Every new man she meets is measured against the ghost of you, and they are all found wanting, not because they are inherently flawed, but because they are not the original. This comparison is rarely a conscious, deliberate act. It is a visceral, instinctual reaction that happens in the quiet spaces of her mind. She'll be on a date with a perfectly pleasant, successful man who laughs a little too loudly at his own jokes. She'll feel a pang of absence for your quiet, understated humor. Another might shower her with extravagant compliments and constant text messages. And instead of feeling cherished, she feels smothered. She remembers the value of your earned and thoughtful attention, which never felt desperate or performative. The new suitors are often more overtly eager, quicker to agree, more desperate to secure her approval. At first, this eagerness can be flattering, a balm to the ego. But it soon becomes cloying. She begins to see that their compliance is not kindness, but a lack of core strength. They bend where you stood firm. They seek her direction where you had your own compass. This is the cruel paradox she now faces. A woman cannot truly respect a man she can fully control. The very pliability she might have once thought she wanted now feels like a liability. The men who fold to her whims, who change their plans at her slightest suggestion, who orbit her world without one of their own, eventually inspire a quiet contempt. They remind her that she is the strongest force in the dynamic, and that is a lonely, unstable place to be. She finds herself longing for the friction of a true partner, for the solidity of someone who would gently but unwaveringly hold his ground. She misses the very resistance she once resented in you. The qualities she once dismissed in you now reveal their true value with brutal clarity. The boring consistency she complained of is now recognized as the bedrock of peace she desperately craves. The predictable routine she mocked were the architecture of a stable life, a safety net that allowed for genuine vulnerability. The discipline she may have rolled her eyes at was, in fact, the source of your unshakable strength and focus. She is now dating in a world of chaos and uncertainty, and the contrast between her present reality and the past she abandoned is staggering. She discovers that the excitement of new romance is a fleeting high, a sugar rush that quickly fades and leaves a craving for substantive nourishment. The temporary thrills she once chased now feel hollow and exhausting. This cycle of comparison becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy of disappointment. She enters relationships with a subconscious checklist written by your memory, and one by one, the new men fail to meet the standard. They lack the depth, the patience, the quiet confidence. They don't carry the same grounded energy that made her feel, perhaps for the first time, that she could finally relax. Without realizing it, she begins to sabotage these new connections. She becomes harder to please, quicker to criticize, more restless and critical. She pushes men away, not because they are bad, but because their presence is a constant. Living a reminder that she once had something better, and in a moment of profound misjudgment, let it go. You have become the silent, uninvited third party in every relationship she attempts. You are the yardstick against which every other man's character is measured. He is not as emotionally steady. He is not as self-assured. He doesn't listen the same way. He doesn't make her feel as safe. This isn't about you being perfect. It is about you having possessed a specific, rare quality of firmness that she now understands is the cornerstone of a lasting partnership. She is trapped in a loop forever, comparing the fleeting illusion of new passion with the enduring memory of a solid reality. Each failed relationship, each moment of disappointment, is another layer of cement hardening around the benchmark you set, a benchmark that, in her experience, no one else can meet. ensuring a future tinged with the permanent color of quiet, unspoken regret. The final chapter is not one of dramatic revelation or tearful confession. It is a quiet, slow settling of dust. The sharp, acute pains of the earlier stages, the performative freedom, the haunting echoes, the dawning respect, the constant comparison, have all faded. They have not disappeared. Instead, they have metabolized into something far heavier and more permanent, the unchangeable weight of a lifelong regret. This is no longer an emotion she feels. It is a truth she has become. As the distractions of youth inevitably fall away, the parties grow less frequent, the stream of admirers slows to a trickle. The social validation that once felt like oxygen now feels like air. She is left in a stillness she can no longer outrun. It is in this silence that the final, sobering accounting of her life takes place. She isn't just mourning the loss of you anymore. That specific ache has broadened into a profound grief for the future she single-handedly annihilated. She sees the life she could have had not as a fantasy, but as a ghost limb, a tangible, real presence defined by its absence. She thinks of the family she could have built with you, the stability she could have leaned into during her own times of crisis, the simple, unremarkable peace of growing old with a partner whose essence was solid ground. These what-ifs are no longer passing thoughts. They are the ghosts that inhabit her home, especially in the long, quiet evenings. Every minor instability in her life, every moment of loneliness, becomes a stark reminder of the durable foundation she willingly walked away from. She traded the promise of permanent security for the fleeting thrill of temporary highs. And the bill has now come due, payable with the currency of her own contentment. This regret reshapes her very identity. When she looks in the mirror, she no longer sees just a woman aging. She sees the woman who fumbled her one chance at a truly anchored life. She sees a person whose judgment, in the most critical moment of her emotional life, was profoundly flawed. This realization digs deeper than any heartbreak ever could, because it is no longer about you or even about love. It is about self-perception. She is forced to confront the parts of herself she has spent years trying to bury, the recklessness, the ingratitude, the blindness to authentic value. While she may project an image of hardened independence or worldly wisdom to the outside world, inwardly she knows it is a fortress built around a core of self-recrimination. She was the architect of her own destabilization. The final, cruel sting is seeing you at peace without her. Life has a way of offering these glimpses, whether through mutual acquaintances, the silent testimony of social media, or simply the town's quiet gossip. She learns that you have built a life, a good life, a solid life. You married, perhaps? Had children? Excelled in your career? Or perhaps you simply found a quiet, unshakable contentment in your own company. The specifics matter less than the overarching truth. You thrived. Your world not only continued to spin after her exit, it found a truer, more stable axis. This is the ultimate blow to the narrative she once clung to. She was supposed to be the prize whose absence would dim your world. Instead, your enduring peace becomes a permanent mirror, reflecting the chaos and quiet desperation of her own choices. It proves the one thing she never wanted to face. You were never dependent on her. But she, in some fundamental way, was always dependent on the stability you offered. The door, she now knows with absolute certainty, is permanently closed. The early secret hope that you might still be waiting, holding a space for her return when she figured things out, has long since evaporated. Your silence over the years was not a pause. It was a conclusion. The realization that the access to you, to that life, to that version of herself, is irrevocably gone, transforms the regret into something darker and more haunting. It is the knowledge of a permanent exile from a place of peace she herself destroyed. As she moves into the later stages of her life, this regret ceases to be a series of painful moments and becomes the very background music of her existence. It is a constant, low hum of what if that accompanies her every achievement, making them feel slightly hollow in every relationship, making them feel fundamentally incomplete. She may marry another, build a life with someone kind and decent. But there will always be a quiet distance, a chamber of her heart that is occupied by the ghost of a benchmark that was never met. She craves a depth and stability they cannot provide, not because they are lacking, because she already had it once and let it go. This craving becomes her quiet curse in her most honest moments. When there is no one to perform for, she is forced to admit that losing you was the defining turning point of her life. It was the fork in the road where one path led toward stability, grounding, and fulfillment, and the other led to the restless, cyclical dissatisfaction that came to define her journey. She will carry this truth like a shadow, a silent companion to her every smile and public triumph. She may try to make peace with it, to rationalize it as everything happening for a reason, but deep inside, she knows there is no real peace in the willful destruction of something irreplaceable, and what you were was irreplaceable. Not because you were perfect, but because you were firm. And firmness, that rare, unyielding quality of character that provides shelter from life's storms, cannot be faked, bought, or learned. It is a fundamental state of being. She had it. She felt its profound value in the calm it brought to her chaos, and she discarded it. So the final punishment is not the moment she lost you. It is the lifetime that follows. It is living every single day with the knowledge that she made a choice that cannot be undone. It is the weight of the silent, unshakable truth that she once held a man who stood taller than her storms, who offered her a peace she will never find again, and she, with unwavering certainty, threw it away. This is the scar she will take with her to the grave, a burden of her own making, the reason she will never, ever forgive herself.